So welcome to these are some of the later modules of Discovering Buddhism. And Discovering Buddhism was a program designed by Lama Tsong Khapa and FPMT Education Department to give us an overview of the Lam Rim. You may remember that, I don't know if anyone remembers the first few modules of this course. It was about presenting the path and minding its potential, etc. So, and everything after that has been trying to fit the Lam Rim in sequence, starting with remembering the teacher, correctly relying on a teacher through precious and rebirth, impermanence and death, and then thinking about the Four Noble Truths, samsara and nirvana, and then we got establishing a daily practice, transforming problems, and now we're coming to we've done bodhicitta, of course. That was the important point in the Mahayana path, and then
Sorry, I think I've come into the wrong group. I thought this was for beginners.
It is, yeah, it is. You're right, you're fine.
Yeah, so I've not been to any other.
That's fine, no. But what happens is, each of these subjects is about 5-6 weeks. So it's very unusual that anybody would be here from the beginning, because that was like 2.5 years ago. So it's okay, we just keep going through these modules. We've been going through these modules now for, I don't know, like 15-20 years. We just keep going one after the other. So whichever point you join, you'll learn something new.
I see.
So this module is about emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness. And that comes at the end of these 14 modules. But what happens is, we just start again after this at the beginning again. So wherever you join, you can, if you want to continue, you'll kind of get the whole cycle of teachings. But the subject itself is contained neatly within these 5 sessions, so you don't have to have been to the ones before. So I'm just giving an overview of kind of what happened before, if you weren't here. I don't think anyone was here right at the beginning when we started this round. Adita, were you here at the beginning? Okay, right. So I've been in Leeds now 7 years, so I think I've done a couple of cycles of this. I don't teach all of them, and well, it's very rare the same person teaches all modules. We tend to share them around. So anyway, so yeah, and then this wisdom realizing emptiness comes at the end of these modules, because it can be perceived as being quite complicated to understand. So we're going to go very slowly and carefully. We're going to put it into context, and we're going to allow you the chance to ask questions as much as you like as we go along. Just feel very free to just put your hand up, or just put something in the chat if you don't want to speak out loud, or just unmute yourself and ask. It's important we all kind of on the same page, and we're joining this journey together. I myself, I've been around Buddhism, well, nearly 20 years now, but it doesn't mean I know anything. It just means I've had a little bit more experience, perhaps. I've had some great teachers since I've started exploring Buddhism, so I'm happy to share what little bit I know, and we can explore together. And the good thing about explaining in these kind of topics is you learn yourself. So I'm learning with you. So don't feel it's just me, blah, blah. I'm learning too. And Discovering Buddhism is for beginners. So what's important is that we just don't assume that we know anything. And we just kind of all the same basic level of just being beginners and exploring these topics from the beginning. And what's useful at the beginning and end of any Buddhist practice is to set a positive motivation. So that's what we're going to do first, a little meditation and motivation together, to say a couple of Buddhist prayers. And then at the end, we'll do the same. We'll do a little meditation to dedicate any positive karma we've created, and then a little meditation at the end, and do a prayer at the end. So I'm just going to share my screen with you in a minute. But that's how generally all Buddhist events would start. You start with generating refuge and bodhicitta. So refuge and bodhicitta are 2 modules of this course, which we'll come to, or you might have done already. And refuge is a mind that understands the suffering you experience and wants to kind of desperately get out. It's kind of this mind of urgency. It doesn't want any difficulty, it doesn't want any pain, it doesn't want any drama, and it desperately looks for someone who can help. So on the one hand, you have this concern and almost like a fear of the suffering that can come or that is happening right now. And then you turn to somebody or take safe direction, as one teacher calls it, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, those 3 aspects of the Buddhist path that can protect us, the Buddha as the doctor, the Dharma as the medicine that he gives, and the Sangha as the kind of nurses, the support, the NHS to help us, although hopefully in a better state than the NHS, better funded perhaps. So that one mind of refuge is quite a powerful mind, because you can use it throughout the day, you know, when things are going difficult for you in your, you know, in your daily life or in general. And then, you know, if it all seems to be just crazy samsaric nonsense, you can at least have some foundation that, you know, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are quite solid bases on which to kind of take some trust in and some confidence in. So that can be quite powerful throughout one's life and one's practice. And then bodhicitta is the other side of that, which thinks, actually, what about, it's okay looking after myself, of course, but what about everyone else? What about my friends? What about my family? What about those people I work with? What about actually those people I don't even know? And considering, you know, here we are like 4 or 5 people in this class, but actually, you know, we're nearly 7 billion people now on the planet. That's a lot of people, actually. And they're just the same as we are. They all want to experience happiness, and they don't want to have any difficulties, and they're all confused about how to find happiness most of the time. And then that's just the humans we're talking about, but with the animals. So from a Buddhist point of view, we also think about people as animals. So then, you know, just think about how many ants there are. I read this one report recently where it said something like 52 million ants per person on a planet, just this one planet. So if that doesn't blow your mind, then what about all the other planets that, you know, potentially have people, sentient beings, people with minds, creatures with minds in the universe? And that's just like extraordinary, isn't it? So this bodhicitta, the second bit of meditation we're going to do, just thinks, well, however many there are, it doesn't matter, because, you know, it's my job. I'm going to take on the responsibility to do it. I'm going to liberate every single one of those sentient beings so they become fully enlightened, fully awakened Buddha. And you think, oh, that's quite a job, actually, isn't it? To take on that responsibility to liberate every sentient being in the universe. It's quite a task. So then you have to have some qualifications, some skills. So then the thought comes up, well, actually, that means I had to go enlighten myself. So then the motivation is, I want to become enlightened so that I can liberate and enlighten all living beings, all sentient beings. Does that make sense? So in a nutshell, that's those 2 minds we're going to look at in this meditation verse together. Refuge and bodhicitta. Refuge, thinking about our own suffering and looking for a source to help us. And then bodhicitta, this mind that then is quite expansive and vast, thinks, actually, I'm going to become enlightened for the sake of all living beings. However long it takes, however many there are, however many universes there are, doesn't matter, because suffering is suffering, and I'm going to get rid of it wherever it is experienced. So, now, I'm not saying that we're going to be perfect at these 2 minds. It might freak us out, you know, refuge and bodhicitta. That's fine. We're just practicing. We're just getting a bit of a taste. So don't worry if you haven't got bodhicitta. I don't have it yet. Or refuge even. So just generate something similar. And, you know, as they say, fake it till you make it. Just imagine what it's like to have those 2 minds, and you infuse your thoughts and your emotions and your experiences with those 2 minds as much as you can in this meditation. And then, you know, that's good enough. That plants some seeds to eventually develop the real things later on. And especially that becomes important to remember with this topic, because wisdom, realized emptiness is quite complicated. As you go through this, you're going to kind of think, I'm never going to get it. On one hand, it's quite simple to think about, but on the other hand, it's like, well, it's going to take me ages, but that's okay. You know, we're going to talk about how we actually realize emptiness as we go along this course, these weeks together. Any questions so far before we launch into our motivation? All right, so let me just share my screen here so we have some prayers to start with. Can you all see that okay? You should see refuge and bodhicitta before the teaching and then from the Vinaya. So this verse is quite common in Buddhist teachings. There's lots of prayers that can go before a teaching or meditation or a learning workshop together. This one is always used pretty much from what I experience anyway. So we could say, let's say it in Tibetan twice, and then in English once. And the first 2 lines are about that refuge mind that I spoke about. And the last 2 lines are about this bodhicitta, this brave mind. So as much as you can think about that. Now then this second verse is one that the Dalai Lama likes to use a lot in the teachings. And this is quite nice because it brings together 2 important parts of the Buddha's teachings, compassion and wisdom, which we're going to look at the wisdom wing today in these 5 weeks. So we're going to keep going back to that one as we start each session together. So we'll recite that verse in English when we get there. So if you'd like to join me, I invite you to, but if not, you can just listen and generate some of those positive minds we talked about. Sangye chedang seki chognam lai janchu badu dani kapsu chi dagi chenengi pesenam gi jala penche sangye jupala sho. Sangye chedang seki chognam lai janchu badu dani kapsu chi Dagi chiyengi pesenam gi jala penchi sangye jopalasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Then the verse from the Vinaya. He who, caring with compassion, taught the holy Dharma so that all wrong views would be abandoned, Gautama, homage to him. Okay, so with that positive mind then, I'm going to do my best to introduce some of the kind of like the main kind of categories that we put Buddha's teachings into. One of them was in that verse that we looked at there, the Vinaya verse. He who caring with compassion taught the holy Dharma so that all wrong views will be abandoned. So we can actually describe the Buddha's canon, if you like, into two aspects, the compassion wing and the wisdom wing. And there's lots of different types of wisdoms, lots of times, awarenesses and knowledges, etc. And this course is mainly going to be about the wisdom realizing emptiness. And it said that just like a bird needs two wings to cross the ocean of liberation, so do we need these two minds of compassion and wisdom to be able to become fully enlightened. So both these aspects are needed. I mean, what happens even in ordinary context is if we have lots of compassion and lots of caring for others, and lots of empathy and lots of love for others, but we don't have any wisdom that knows how to help. Actually, we might do more harm than good, isn't it, sometimes? And conversely, if we have lots of accurate knowledge about how we can help people, we know exactly what tools are needed, we know the processes, we know the care processes and procedures that are needed to help beings, etc. We're fantastic, but we have no compassion or no love, then we probably wouldn't bother. We just think, oh, well, I know all that knowledge, I'll go off and do my exams and get my nice salary and go and teach university, etc. Being a bit rude to professors, perhaps, but I mean, so without that kind of empathy, that compassion, actually, we might be missing something. So both of those elements, like compassion and wisdom, are really important for getting the full experience of our potential for enlightenment. And that, bear in mind, by this point in the path of the Buddha, when we get to bodhicitta, everything we're doing is to become enlightened for living beings. We're trying to realize emptiness for the sake of living beings. We're trying to realize refuge and bodhicitta for the sake of living beings. We're trying to remember impermanence. We're trying to correctly rely on the spiritual teacher. All those other topics that kind of come before this for the benefit of living beings, by us becoming the best we can possibly be of ourselves, enlightened beings, awakened ones, right? So that verse, he who caring with compassion, so that's the compassionate element, taught the holy Dharma so that all wrong views would be abandoned, and wisdom realizing emptiness abandons wrong views, one very strong wrong view in particular, which is what we're going to talk about in this course. So in that verse, you have those two elements of the path. So that's a nice, easy one. Easy kind of way to remember the Buddha's teachings are just in those two categories, and that's all you need to start with. Discovering Buddhism, so that'll do to start with. It makes sense, right? And all those, we can also talk about the Buddhist path divided into another way, which is quite helpful to talk about here, which is the small, middle, and great scopes. Have you heard of those before? Ellie, have you heard of those before?
No.
I can't. No, is that no, Ellie? Sorry, I didn't hear.
No, I haven't.
No. Have you heard of them, Susie? The three scopes?
So would that be like would it be the Theravada, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana path?
Not far off. Yeah, you're on the right lines. Yes, you're on the right lines, but not quite. Yeah. What about Michelle? Welcome, Michelle, by the way. Hi.
Hi, sorry I'm late, everybody. I was actually helping somebody another Zoom
That was your compassion
support group. Yeah, I was. It was cross country. It was in Limerick in Ireland. So forgive my late arrival. I've not yet heard those words being used. I was thinking back to some teachings with Geshe Namdak last year. So Buddhist mind science and things like that, but I've never heard the small, small, middle,
and great scope. Sometimes Lama Zopa calls them the small capable being, middle capable being, and great capable being, something like that. I'm leaving Adita to last because I'm sure by now she knows what that is. So Adita, what are these three scopes in a nutshell?
So it's the path to enlightenment, isn't it? It's the small scope is about the precious human rebirth, remembering death. The middle scope is about the Four Noble Truth, and the great scope is about bodhicitta and enlightenment.
Yeah,
Lamrim.
In a way, yeah, exactly that. So this is these small, middle, and great scopes are kind of like we talked about compassion and wisdom being two wings. Another way to divide all the Buddha's teachings in this series of steps called Lam Rim. It means steps on the path to enlightenment. Lamrim. That's a Tibetan, right? Or is it Sanskrit? No, I'm not very good at these things. I think it's Tibetan. Lam Rim. So it's steps on the path to enlightenment. And what this great guy did in this great Lama, a teacher, in India, went to Tibet, he kind of put the Buddhist teachings into a series of steps. He said, okay, so if you're confused about, these massive volumes of works and these 40 years of teachings that the Buddha presented, I'll just put them into this nice little order for the Tibetans, because he went for the Tibetans. He went over the Himalayas and helped them. And he says, okay, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, step 4, and by step 4, you should have this. And then he says, okay, the next bit is this middle scope, then blah, 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 blah. And by the end of that middle scope, you should have this realization. And then these last little steps, blah, 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 blah. And then you should have this great scope sorted. So he put it into these 3 scopes, and each of these scopes has steps. Basically, that's all it is. It's just a series of psychological steps that you use to get to enlightenment. And it's very helpful because if we open the Buddha's, teachings in the sutras and the commentaries, well, for a start, none of them are in English, so we'll have a problem there. We'll have to learn Tibetan or Pali or Sanskrit, for example. And then we'd have to, really have studied like a Geshe to be able to understand it, and that's the 20 years gone. So for us, who are not in that situation, we need something like the Lamrim just to be able to get a hold on what we're supposed to do first, what comes last. It's good to have an overview of where you're going, but we need to know what the first step is and what the last step is. Does that make sense? So as we're used to this kind of thing. It's just common sense. If you're teaching a kid piano in school, for example, he's grade 1 or 2, or she's grade 3 or 4, and then this person's grade 7 or 8. But the person who's grade 7 and 8 has already been through steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You just suddenly appear at grade 8. They went through these steps for all at different levels. But some people need to start at the beginning, and therefore you need to know what kind of books or scales, etc., to practice if you're grade 1. So a teacher's already done this for us, because he's already, graduated. So he knows what levels are needed at what stage. And that's what the Lamrim is. And that's what this Discovering Buddhism course has been all about, is going through these levels. So small scope is about wanting to be free of suffering of the lower realms. I want to stay in a human realm. That's the goal. Because a practitioner of the small scope wants to be in a nice blissful state where they have a series of continuity of human rebirth, so they can continue practicing Dharma and have a happy, reasonably happy in samsaric existence anyway. Series of precious human rebirths, we call them, specific reasons for that, so that they continue practicing. Does that make sense? So, because if you go to an animal realm, you're going to be stuck there. And in animal realm, you know, if we had, you know, a cat here or a dog or a cow, I don't know, we try to explain to them a little thing about, you know, this guy in Tibet called Atisha. You can explain it to them. You know, Lama Tsong Khapa told me this once in a teaching or in an interview I had with him way back when. He says, you know, you could explain something simple to a cow, like, you know, from good behavior comes happiness, you know, or being generous will mean that you'll have lots of wealth. You know, something simple like that, simple formula, simple karmic formula from Buddhist principles like that. And you can explain it to this cow for, you know, the rest of its life, and it will understand absolutely nothing, no way, not one single thing ever. That is the kind of the real suffering of an animal realm existence. Not to mention, you know, the physical suffering and the fear that they experience. But this is just they have no way of grasping onto any principles or karmic cause and effect, to therefore be able to liberate themselves. So it's very difficult. So you do not want to be born in that state as first, you know. It's not that you shouldn't have compassion with animals, of course you should, but the idea of the first stage practice is that at least you don't want to get there yourself, because you're not going to be able to help these animals if you're stuck there yourself. Otherwise it's blinding the blind, isn't it? Right? So that's the kind of goal of the small scope practitioner, is to at least not be born in the lower realms. Yep. So they have to go through certain practices to kind of generate that wish, because we don't often think about it. We don't even think we're going to die most of the time. We think we're just going to live on forever. So there's certain practices the Buddha kind of put in there to just make us think about these things seriously. And then he says, you know, if the practices to avoid that are at least abandon the 10 non-virtuous actions, practice the 10 virtuous actions, and if you can do that, you're guaranteed to get a precious human rebirth next, you know, with some wishing prayers and practicing 6 perfections, those kind of things. Yeah. So that's a small scope practitioner. Easier. That's all we have to do to be born human next. So you can see already at the beginning of the Lam Rim, it already assumes that you understand, you know, this life isn't the only one and you're going to go on, which is difficult for us in the West, because that's not part of our culture to believe in past and future lives. Past lives is the one thing. To believe in future lives is maybe easier for us, because our Christian culture obviously is quite heavily involved in that way, but past lives isn't really a theistic tenet. We're just created out of nowhere, so that might be a bit more difficult for us to process. So we're not saying you should believe any of this stuff, we're just saying this is the Buddha's deal, and you know, we're just exploring it like scientists.
Yeah, it's funny you said about the lower realms,
right?
And I suppose that sounds a little bit hierarchical, I guess, and kind of, and I suppose my reaction to that, but I think if I understand right, when you described an animal, not that animals are horrible and we shouldn't love animals, it was more about we're not going to because they're well, how can I describe the difference between humans and animals? How long have I got? But they're not going to take in the knowledge and act on it and continue that learning and passing on the goodness to others. That's kind of what it's saying by lower realms, is that inability for the
exactly, yeah,
continuity.
Yeah, that's very mature thinking. Absolutely, yeah. It's not about, you know, we're better or worse than others. It's just we're a position of which we can practice the Buddha's teachings to liberate ourselves and others. The best place is to be right in the middle of samsaric existence in this human realm. That's the best of all existences. So if you get the lower realm, that opportunity is taken away from you, because you're either involved in intense pain and suffering, or you know, you're overwhelmed by hunger and thirst, or like animals, you know, they haven't got the intelligence, they don't have a brain capacity like we do to be able to communicate such ideas, complex concepts, think about the future, etc. Yeah, so it's made on the lower realms is on that basis. Absolutely, yeah. Good point. So just go back to my point then, that it assumes already, even the small scope, that you understand that the human mind can go into the body of an animal, become a human, become an animal, etc. There are the lower existences, the hell realms and the hungry ghost realms, where they're just characterized by different obstacles, if you like, hellish existence because it's overwhelmed by pain and difficulty, and where there's no chance to think about anything else at that point. It's just too painful. Or the hungry ghost realm, so-called, just because they're overwhelmed by hunger and thirst, and that's all that's going to overtake your mind. There's no other chance to think about anything, like sat in a living room on a Zoom call, you know, none of that in those realms. It's just way too difficult, right? And animals likewise, although animals do appear on Zoom sometimes, people's languages.
Yeah, mine might. So apologies.
Exactly.
She's a little bit tetchy today. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm trying not to move very much.
Oh, thanks. So like I say, the Buddha himself would say, don't believe anything I say, you just have to try it yourself. This is what the Buddha found was reality, and he's explored that to such an extent that he's awakened himself, and he's saying, this is what I found. If you practice too, you can find it, but you have to experience that yourself. You can't do it for us. This enlightenment journey, he's only showing us these steps, and it's up to us to investigate, like scientists of the mind, and then try it out and see. Okay, so that's a small scope. Easy enough, right? The middle scope then, so the thing about to remember the small scope is that the things you have to do to get human rebirth is to abandon killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, is to abandon lies, divisive speech, gossip, and hateful speech. I did the order wrong there, sorry. So the ones of speech are lying, divisive speech, harmful speech, or hateful speech, and then gossip. And then the 3 of the mind to abandon are covetousness, ill will, and wrong views. So there's 10. At least the Buddha says, at least get a hold on those 10, and don't, as much as you can, don't do those. Don't kill, don't steal, don't use sex as a weapon or something to hurt others. And it all comes from this motivation of harm. So if we're trying to do actions which harm others, then we're going to land ourselves in lower realms. So it's not a puritanical thing. It's not the Buddha's going to punish us. It's not that we're going to be told off and we should feel guilty and naughty, etc. It's nothing like that. It's just saying the consequences of these actions are these. And that's why they're called negative or dark or unhelpful, etc., because it's going to affect your progress on the path. That's why the division is made between good or bad, or, positive, negative, etc. And we're going to talk about that a bit more next week when we talk about the afflictive emotions, because the wisdom realizing emptiness and afflictive emotions have a very powerful connection, which we need to get clear. So back to middle scope then. Middle scope practitioner is a step further than that. So the Buddha says, well, if you're going to take a few human rebirths, actually what you're going to find is even having a continuity of human rebirths is going to make you pretty miserable in the end. It's better than lower realms, the Buddha would say, don't get them wrong, but even that human existence, what life after life, isn't really satisfactory in the end, because just look at the human realm, right? We all experience loneliness, anxiety, depression. We end up fighting with each other. We get attached, and we can't bear people to invade our country or our spaces. It's a constant struggle because our bodies are out of control. They age quicker than we'd like, and they get sick or without a moment's notice. And suddenly, you can't perform your full capacity. And then before you know it, the whole system collapses and you're being pushed into another rebirth. So even that lack of freedom, you could say, of being a human isn't ideal in the end at all either. Yeah, so that there's a whole series of meditations in the middle scope to realizing actually it's not comfortable here either. It'd be better, the Buddha suggests, to be out of the whole lot altogether, out of the whole stinking mess, the whole samsaric existence, this uncontrolled rebirth, having to take rebirth again and again without any control. You have no clue where you're going to go next. You can increase the odds, of course, as the Buddha says in the first scope, by restraining from those 10 negative actions, but you still have no ultimate control of where you go. You're just going to get thrown into a body, and you hope it's a good one. So once you've understood that, and you realize that actually it'd be better to be free of the whole suffering altogether, the cause of that suffering is just this unenlightened existence of the body and the mind. Better to have that removed so you could have a blissful mind and a blissful body and choose where you want to be reborn. And that's called the wish for liberation. This is what the middle scope practitioner is aiming for, to be free of samsaric existence altogether. And they do that by practicing the 3 higher trainings, which is concentration, ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And those 3 practices are the way to remove yourself from samsara altogether. And the wisdom there, specifically, that's the point to note here. That's what this topic is about, the wisdom realizing emptiness. That wisdom is what's going to get us out of samsara. We're going to look at that in detail next session. So it makes sense so far? Are we going too fast, or are we keeping up?
I like you speak really fast, and that does work for me, but I worry sometimes I'm missing some new words, such as samsara.
Samsara, yeah. Let's talk about samsara. Well, samsara is just, samsara can be thought of in different contexts, but samsara is a Sanskrit word. It just means this, this perpetual having to take rebirth again and again without any control. We're stuck. So from a Buddhist point of view, we've had beginningless past lives, and we've never been enlightened. We've always been stuck in samsaric existence. Birth, death, birth, sickness, old age, death, lots of sufferings in between. We've never been able to escape. And now, by some miracle, we've got some advice about how to get out. It's taken us all this long, since infinity, since beginningless time. It might be the first time we've ever come across it. Hard to say. We might have been this place so many times that we never got any further. Who knows? I can't see past life, so you'd have to ask someone else about that. But it's an interesting thought, isn't it? And it will continue, because the mind doesn't end either. The mind just continues on endlessly. But, that experience of that mind to be blissful or stuck in samsaric existence is up to us, Anyway, yeah, so samsara. Sometimes use this phrase in frivolous ways, like, if something's going wrong in our lives, say, oh, it's just samsara, just my samsara. I know.
I'm going to try and use it tomorrow and just leave it there and say, yeah, so that's that then.
Right. So the reason why ethics, concentration, and wisdom is very important. We won't spend too much time on that, but, if we're not able to keep a happy and calm mind, concentration, then the levels of concentration we need to realize emptiness are going to be difficult. So it kind of works backward. So you need to realize wisdom, realizing emptiness, you need quite a powerful, concentrated mind. So therefore, that's the second one. And to do that, you need a happy mind that's not worrying about, well, I did this and I'm having to think about that. I'm going to get caught out, or I'm angry, or I'm, like the Dalai Lama often says, if we have to think about covering all our lies or stealing, it's kind of like this heavy weight on our mind. I'm going to get caught, or I'm going to be found out, or it's just not a healthy space of mind to be able to concentrate and reach higher levels of meditation in. So there's a very practical reason why ethics is very helpful, because you don't have to worry. You're doing everything you can to help other beings, and you're living as clean and as kind a life as you can. And that's really peaceful for the mind. Yeah. Susie, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, she stopped.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just was wondering, I have a question. So you mentioned the first lower scope. It has rights. It sort of reminds me of a noble eightfold path. Does that have anything to do with further taking human rebirths, or does it have to do with possible stream entry?
Well, you're getting a few terms mixed up there. So when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, the fourth noble truth there is the truth of the path, and that is one of the ways to describe that fourth noble truth is by the noble eightfold path. And then right view, thought, concentration, etc., method, mindfulness, those could be thought of as these ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So you can divide those 8 into the 3 high trainings, and like I say, get yourself out of samsara, which is great. But stream entry and such like that, that's more about different types of practitioner along the path, like on the path of seeing, path of meditation, path of normal learning, etc. So I don't want to go into those here. I think we'll just confuse ourselves with that one. Maybe in the later sessions, I don't know. But yeah, so you can divide those 8 into the 3 actually we're talking about here. Geshe Taishi talks about that in his book, The Four Noble Truths, for example. You can explore that topic more there. Does that help, Susie, a little bit? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So that was the end of the small scope. So, but end of the middle scope, sorry. So with me so far? So the small practitioner of the small scope has got out of lower realms and is having this nice time on his human realm, or her realm. Well, you're all, I should say hers now. On her a continuity of precious human rebirths, and she's doing really well. But then the Buddha says, actually, you've got a bit further to go, because even though your human realm existence isn't great, it's the best there is, right, in samsaric existence. But what about going a bit further and getting out of samsara altogether? And you go, great, okay, let's do that. So then you do these 3 high trainings, keep good ethics, you use concentration to develop these real profound levels of meditation. And then with that concentration, you're able to realize emptiness directly, bam. And then with a bit more work, once you realize that, you chip away all the things in the mind that are stopping you, and you become what's called a foe destroyer. You destroy the foe, which is the afflictions, by the way. You destroy the foe, and you become an arhat, a foe destroyer, and then you're out of samsara altogether. Fantastic. Job done, you would think, right? But like we said in our motivation at the beginning, what about everybody else? Everyone else, it's like you got out of this burning house. It was a building in Leeds, actually, and burnt down an old council building a few days ago. So imagine you running out of this building thinking, great, I've got out, I'm perfectly free, but everyone else is in there, you know, still burning to death. You'd be horrified, wouldn't you? And that's the kind of the mind then of the bodhisattva, thinking, well, I've got myself out, great, but what about everyone else? So then the bodhisattva then takes up this extra step. This bodhisattva is someone who's going to practice the great scope, and they are now going to become enlightened for the sake of all living beings. Because even when you're out of samsara, there's still some stuff in the mind that hasn't been cleared. It's still like some stuff that's stopping you becoming a fully awakened being. So you're not a Buddha once you're out of samsara. You're only this foe destroyer. I say only. It's still pretty awesome.
What do you say before the word destroyer? It sounds like foal, and I'm thinking baby horse.
Foe, F-O-E. Like destroy the enemy, foe.
Say it with a Yorkshire accent, Kerry. Foe.
Foe destroyer. Yeah. So the motivation comes from that is because you realize everyone else is still stuck in the lower realms, stuck in the human realm, stuck in the God realms. They're all still there and they can't get themselves out. So, and you know, moved by this wish to help, you take on this big responsibility. So you do this extra work of clearing everything that's possible out of the mind that we're going to get in the way. There's still these little bits left called what's called them knowledge obscurations, type of obscurations in the mind that are left. And then so you do this last great scope to remove those. And the practice that you do on that one is called the 6 perfections. Oh, Ellie's had to go, bless her, which is all right. So as a great scope practitioner, you're practicing the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, choice, effort, concentration, and wisdom. Some of them appear more than once, right? So as a great scope practitioner, then you are marching along, and eventually the result of that will be full enlightenment. And then once you've done that, of course, you spend the rest of your infinity in blissful Buddha state, helping everyone else get there too, which is what Buddha Shakyamuni did. And here we are because of that, right?
I mean, is there any way to like help these beings? Like, it sounds so sad, like having to run out of a council estate house and
say what? Sorry, I didn't get that.
It's having to run out of a burning building,
okay,
and you don't know how to help these people. I mean, what did the Buddha say about it?
Well, the thing is, you know, it's only an analogy, so we have to be careful with analogies. They're not, you know, it's just to give us a taste. But what's happening, you know, it's like this analogy that, well, another analogy, but it's just, you know, while we're sat here learning about our minds and generating more bodhicitta and compassion for others, you know, there's other people around the world that are quite suffering right now, aren't they? Right now. So it's not that we're ignoring these people, you know, in Ukraine or in Russia who are suffering desperately, or other parts of the universe, you know, people suffering in cold and thirst, all kinds of things. It's not like, you know, we don't care about this being, it's just that we can't help them right now because we don't have the capacity. We're not able to go to Russia or Ukraine, or we're not able to emanate millions of bodies and help in all kinds of ways right now. We're only very limited. So the motivation is still there. I want desperately help all these people, but I haven't got the skills yet. So you're learning the skills so you can do that. So in your heart, you're kind of, you know, still holding them there But until you've got the skills, it's just wishful thinking, but you're doing everything you can to get to those skills. Yeah. Does that make some sense?
Okay, yes, it does. Yeah, thank you. Well, I feel like I'm going to go down like the route of like in the Pali scripts where like somebody asks this like the Buddha like a question,
Yeah.
and like it just goes like more and more questions. I've got more questions now.
That's what we're here for. It's good. Go ahead.
Okay.
This is so few of us. I don't think we'll do breakout groups. That'll be a bit. It'll all be so many. So it's better we just have discussions if something comes up, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Should we carry on recording this, or
It's still recording, yeah. But if
yeah.
unless you want to stop, is that what you're saying, Susie? You want to stop recording?
Of course. I mean, it's up to everybody else. I mean, no.
Does anybody
Okay.
want to stop the recording while we have questions?
No, for me, the questions are the, learning as well.
Mhm.
So no, fill your boots.
Okay, so Susie, if you've got another question, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to continue.
So what are the skills you need to help other beings? Like, what would you like the inner skills? What would they be? Like, because you need skills to help.
You need the wisdom realizing emptiness. Definitely that one.
Yes.
So we're in the right place. Because unless we have the wisdom realizing emptiness, we're going to be making all these mistakes, and we're still going to have afflicted states of mind. So we're going to look at that next week in particular. But we also need compassion that is strong and courageous and doesn't just flake out if it gets difficult. We need compassion that isn't just biased for our friends and family and people we like. It's got to be for anybody, anywhere, at all times. So those things are they take training. And these Lam Rim, for example, it lists all these things that we need to help others, right from the beginning of correctly relying on a spiritual teacher all the way through to tantric realizations. We need all those. So you need everything, Susie. Absolutely, all those realizations of Lam Rim, we need them all to be able to do the best help for others. Of course, you're going to be able to help others along the way if you have a little bit of patience, a little bit of compassion. We've all got that to begin with. We've all got a little bit of wisdom. We've all got some generosity. We've got some joyous effort for others. We've got some kindness, some love, but they're very temporary. They tend to get overwhelmed by the afflicted states of mind, and then we tend to lose the plot a bit. So we need to develop some courage and some consistency, and that just comes through practice. Like I keep saying, it's always about being the gym. The mind, the Lam Rim is just like the gym. You got to learn the methods, and you just keep practicing until it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So you're mentally liberated from all the things that would stop you becoming your best potential. And I just want to say one thing about these three scopes then, because I know I've kind of just more rabbited on about that a bit, but it's important to remember that if you're practicing the great scope, you're also practicing everything that's in the small scope and the middle scope. If you're practicing the middle scope, you're practicing everything that's in the small scope. If you're practicing the small scope, you're practicing small scope. You might, do some of the bits from the other parts if you like, but your main goal is only as far as your motivation would take you. There's no reason to liberate all sentient beings if you just want to become another human being next. So you wouldn't go that far probably. Yeah, so I just want to throw that out there. All right, so then where does the wisdom realizing emptiness fit into all this? So let me ask you some questions now that I've given you the information, exam time. Where does this of the realizations of the small, middle, and great scope then? We talked about the aspirations of these scopes, but also the minds that these beings will realize are also divided into these three scopes. So the realization, the wisdom realizing emptiness, in which of the three scopes is that one?
Oh, actually, you muted.
Sorry, what?
Actually, on mute.
You're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's a higher scope because emptiness is one of the high realizations to like the Buddha uses the word like to like cut through, like to like forcefully I don't know, I can't use the word, but you know what I mean, the word to like gain that, like basically just penetrate the wisdom of emptiness. That's like one of the high realizations, I think Martin said last time.
Yeah, so I think you're right. It's definitely not in the small scope. It's way too advanced for small scope. But is it just in the great scope, or is it in the middle scope? What does Michelle or Adita think?
I thought it was in the small scope. Just
not quite in the small scope. It's
No.
too advanced a small scope.
It was only because it was kind of thinking about the lower realms, and that was an affliction, some suffering if you're emptiness.
So what do beings of the small scope need to avoid the lower realms? What's their main practice? Like our practice. What does the small scope beings practice?
Rebirth. Well, they need to free themselves, or they need to, they shouldn't be doing those 10 things.
Right, good. That's the one you need to think about then. Their practice, like
those
they're
10
kind
things,
of
10 bad things.
They're training. They're go at the gym, the mind gym. That they're avoiding those 10 non-virtuous actions. That's what. Right. Okay. Good. Yeah. So, what is the practices then of this middle scope, Adita?
So yeah, so I thought it's a middle scope, because when you practice and the practitioners wants to get out, we want to get out of the samsara.
Right.
We have to realize the emptiness to be able to do that. So it will be the middle scope. So when you practice the ethic concentration, and then that gives you the basis to realize the emptiness. The wisdom realizing emptiness.
There's lots of different wisdoms, but the wisdom that's the important one to get you out of samsaric existence altogether is this wisdom realizing emptiness. So that's where it first appears in the series of steps in the middle scope, and that's all that you need to get out of samsaric existence at all. That's all you need to get out of samsara, is to realize emptiness.
Sorry, Kerry, I know I was late. Apologies, but how has this topic come about? Is it part of the larger course? Did you set the scene for emptiness?
Right. Well, I kind of, this is what we're doing. All this first session is just introducing all the Buddhist teachings into different categories. So one of the first ways we talked about was compassion and wisdom. Compassion wing, wisdom wing. That was just an easy way to think about the Buddha's teachings as a whole. Lamrim is a series of all these steps written from 1 to however many in these 3 categories: the small, middle, and great.
Yes.
So that's how we got here.
Yes. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, compassion and wisdom was the one I joined on. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just explaining this small, middle, and great scopes. Now, what you can do is you can divide, another way of dividing the Buddhist teachings into 3 principal aspects of the path. So what do you think they are? Does anyone know what they are?
Sorry, Kerry, just repeat the question.
So the way of dividing all these Buddha's teachings is called the 3 principal aspects of the path. A path just being like the Lamrim, a path being like a journey of the mind. And we say path or Lamrim, we're talking about the mind. We're not talking about a place so you have to go up a mountain or anything. Adita, what are these 3? You should know.
Isn't renunciation, ethics, concentration? No.
How many do you want there? There's some
3.
Try and think of one for each of the 3 scopes. That'll get us 3 principal aspects. The main one, if you like, of the 3 scopes. So renunciation, definitely, because renunciation is renunciation is the wish to be free of all samsaric existence. So that's kind of related to middle scope. But some people, would argue that even the small scope isn't really practicing Dharma, but we won't go there because you're still stuck in suffering. Anyway, I'll just So renunciation is one of them. Renunciation sounds a bit of a medieval title, but it just means that you have the wish to get out of samsara. That's what it means. And then wisdom realizing emptiness, sometimes called pure view. That's the other principal aspect. And the other principal aspect is bodhicitta. So that's another way to think about all the Buddha's teachings.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So these three scopes, there's one where you want to be human again and again. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then the next one is where you want to escape samsara.
Right.
And the third one is where you want to help everybody get out of samsara.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay. That's the question. Just
yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Bodhicitta has two kind of aspirations. This aspiration of the great scope person, because she wants to become enlightened herself. That's one part of it. To liberate all other beings. That's the second part of it. So it has these two parts to it now. Just in case we get that on an exam or something. No, I don't know why I said that. Okay, so what's important to think about here is that the reason why we find it difficult to be happy in our daily lives is because we're battered about by our own minds, our own controlled minds, the afflicted states of minds. So, anxiety, anger, jealousy, possessiveness, neediness, the list goes on, right? We know all these ugly states of mind that make us miserable. And a lot of the meditations, for example, in the middle scope, are about trying to understand that from an objective point of view, so that we can kind of become scientists and really understand what these minds are doing to us. We have to understand the nature of these afflicted states of minds, what they do to us, why we don't want them. And the more we kind of study them, the more we become really familiar with them, like understanding the enemy, the more we'll actually really want to liberate ourselves from that, emancipate ourselves from those, because they're just really painful to experience. Like I think I said in the course we just finished on Monday night, it's like no one's going to sit down on a nice sunny day in the park, sit on a bench and think, okay, I've got 10 minutes is here, 10 minutes, I'm just having a nice lunch, I'll just sit down and get angry for 10 minutes. That's just bizarre, right? Because these minds are so painful, nobody wants them on purpose. And the more we study this, we realize actually the reason why we want to be free of these is because we don't have any control. We want to take back control. Like we want to take back control of where we experience rebirths. More important than that probably is, I want to take control of how I experience my life. I want to be happy all the time, which from our Western point of view is a bit weird. We'll think we're a bit nuts if we try and say I want to be happy all the time, but that's what the Buddha's actually saying. It's actually quite extreme if you think about it. The Buddha's saying we can be happy all of the time and have no minds that are going to cause us distress ever. It's possible, and that's quite far out, because normally we just assume that we have a mixture of positive and negative, and there's a balance, and people have more or less of this, but it's just normal to have a little bit of afflicted states of mind. But the Buddha says they're afflicted because they're actually based in something that is false. And this is the key. We're going to talk about this wisdom realizing emptiness. There's something that's not, we're projecting wrongly or believing something falsely in all this somewhere, and it's making us out of control. So we have to kind of get to the bottom of that, and that's what really this topic is about. It's quite juicy to realize how it is exactly we're interpreting things wrongly. From the Buddhist point of view, we have to just investigate it, like I keep saying. There's a very nice verse in Shantideva, the Bodhisattva's deeds, that I always remember. Although wishing to have happiness, like it's the enemy, they ignorantly destroy it. Although wishing to be free of suffering, they run towards it. So it's like, you know, we don't quite understand what happiness is even, because, you know, we tend to fall into these patterns of behavior where we grasp onto things, we're falsely projecting what they can give us, and then when that object actually reveals its true nature and actually it can't give us what we expected, we get upset and we blame the object. So as Venerable Rabina often says when she comes to Leeds, you know, says we're all mentally ill, it's just a question of degree, because we keep projecting all this stuff out there that isn't there. We're kind of just like creating all these stories about people, about objects, about the ways that we can experience happiness. And we're assuming that the more we kind of put into our senses, like ears, eyes, all the holes, you know, wherever it can go, we'll assume that the more to do that, the more we'll be happy. And if it doesn't quite do that, you know, if we kind of keep pushing, and the tragic thing is, you know, in the West, we're told that it's possible more and more in more exciting ways all the time. We can't avoid it. In magazines, papers, you go in the shops, you just can't help it. It's everywhere. It's like everything, all this false happiness, all this, I shouldn't say false happiness, because you do get some benefits from it. You can't deny that. But it's just like, it's unrealistic because, you know, the levels we expect to get from it is nothing like what it can actually bring. So we get certain comfort from these things like, you know, chocolate cake or a warm room, or go to the cinema, or, you know, experiencing happiness with your friends, etc. But you know, those things can only bring us happiness for a certain little while, and then they run out, and then we're kind of left feeling empty again. So we have to go searching for more, and so we keep grasping for more, and so we kind of get this junky kind of mind, this kind of cycle. We get this addiction because we assume that happiness is out there. We don't have any here, so we have to keep finding it all the time, bringing it in, and that's exhausting. And we've learned certain objects are kind of falsely, if you like, are going to bring us happiness. So we're projecting more and more. And then when these objects, like I say, turn out to be unsatisfactory in a deep way, we get upset. And then we have depression, and then we get angry. And then, you know, when somebody leaves us, we get upset. Or if I lose our job, or, you know, if something happens in our finances and things are out of control, and we assume that then we have to be miserable because everything on the external world has changed. But actually, that's just our mind's experience of the events. We don't have to actually go that way. We can actually be blissfully happy no matter what happens. And you do that by removing all these afflicted state of minds completely. And how you do that is you have to understand why they're being created to begin with. So where do all these afflicted state of minds come from? Where do all these wrong, false, you know, projections come from? They come from a misunderstanding the Buddha suggested of how things actually exist at a fundamental level. Right at the very essence of an object, we believe instinctively that it exists right there in the object itself. And the Buddha says that's a complete fabrication. Everything around us, ourselves, our bodies, the things we look around us and see right now, everything is merely imputed by our minds. There's nothing inherently in those objects in and of themselves.
Okay.
So they still function, you know, they still have just one minute. So they still have, you know, a capacity to function and still work and still operate. But, you know, we kind of project quite falsely that actually those things have some real entity in there, some real quality that can, once I attach to it, for example, is going to bring me something. But that's all just your mind creating stuff. And we've never doubted it. I mean, why would we? You know, you wouldn't doubt it, would you? It seems quite extreme. Susie, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just wondering, how are we for time?
It's good. I'm keeping you on the time. Don't worry about that. I've got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, that we could call that ignorance, right? It's an odd way to say it, maybe. And we're ignorant about how things exist. Nobody likes to be called ignorant, do they? So if we're talking about this realization as a wisdom, then it's a wisdom that understands something correctly, right? So the opposite of that will be an ignorance that just misunderstand something. And we're going to talk about the relationship between that wisdom and the ignorance as we go along, because that's an important point to get clear. So the Buddha says, you know, that we misunderstand things at quite a fundamental level. And on the basis of that misunderstanding, all the other afflicted states of minds kind of leap out from. Yeah. all the grasping, needy, attachment-based ones, and all the aversion, pushing away ones, they're all based on something that's fundamentally mistaken underneath it all. Yeah. So if we can realize the way things actually exist, which is as merely labeled, we'll talk about what that means as we go along. If we can understand that fundamentally things don't exist in that concrete way, but actually they're much more ephemeral, much more, how to say it, uncertain, then actually we'll be more realistic about what's happening in our worlds and the things around us, and we realize that things are actually quite dependent. There's nothing independent and solid. Actually, things are much more relying on other things around us, changing moment by moment. It's all very fluid and flexible. So to have this concrete idea about things and objects and ourselves is the root of it all. So once we can realize that at a profound level, it's okay just into hearing it intellectually and conceptually. We can get a grasp on the concept. Hopefully over these next 5 weeks we'll do that. But actually to get it really subconscious, you could say, the Buddha didn't use that term, but if we can get subconscious and really deep and profound, we can actually realize how things actually exist, because we don't believe it now instinctively. Somehow, I don't know why it is, but just the way samsaric existence is, we instinctively believe when we're born that things exist inherently. And it takes a lot of time to undo that. So once we've done that, then we pull the rug out from all the afflictive states of mind. There will be no more depression, no more anxiety. There will be no basis for the false projections, because you know exactly how things exist. So the false projections, and therefore the ignorance, and therefore the afflictions, they can't be created anymore. So that's why the Buddha's deal is actually quite scientific when he says that you can be generally happy all the time, blissfully happy, because it's just based in, the afflictions are based in a wrong misunderstanding. So if you learn the correct view, then the false projections have no leg to stand on, as it were. And therefore, enlightenment and liberation is possible. Hence the third noble truth, the truth of cessation, which is the main, Buddha's point is to help us free of suffering. So then when you realize that, of course, you think, well, if it's just a case of realizing that, how great, because the person next to me who's desperately suffering, if they realize that too, that'd be awesome. So maybe I can teach that person once I realize myself. What about all these people around the different realms, the animal realms? What about if they can realize emptiness? It's just a case of a view about how things exist. How amazing. And then you're sort of moved by this compassion to help people understand the wisdom. And that is really, apparently, is very powerful for the Bodhisattva practitioner to help all beings to realize the wisdom, realize emptiness, and then liberate themselves. So it gets very exciting. So in a nutshell, that's what we're going to look at. So next week, we're going to look specifically at the afflictive states of mind, how we can realize this. Well, we're going to identify specifically about what ignorance is doing, identify the enemy and the afflictions, get really clear about it, so we can understand how to defeat the enemy. Sound like a plan? Now, I'm not saying we're going to realize emptiness by the time the 5 weeks are over. Don't, misunderstand.
Oh, that's what I'm on the course for. So
okay.
I'm here for therapy first and foremost, Kerry. Is that right?
Fine.
Learn second.
Fine. So I should have got you all to sign a disclaimer before we started. So just in the last 5 or 6 minutes, then, before we do a final meditation and a dedication of our positive karma together, are there any questions? I know it's a lot to take in first session, but I just want to give you a bit of an overview, and then we'll look into more details in the following sessions.
No, just saying from a personal point of view, the way you've approached it, i.e. giving a structure and a background to then into the topic itself, works for me. So thank you for that.
I have a question. Another question. Right. So, who is the enemy? Like, what is the enemy? Is it Mara? Who is Mara?
The
Like,
enemy.
I know you've not mentioned Mara, but like, what's the enemy?
What is the enemy? The enemy is the ignorance which believes that things exist inherently.
So, what is inherent? Like, what does inherent mean?
Yeah, it's not an easy concept to grasp, but you can say these things quite easily, but to get a conceptual idea what inherent means, it takes a bit of thought and a bit of study. So we're going to work on it next week. We'll come back to it. It just takes, I'm just kind of throwing lots of concepts at you, lots of titles, and somehow your brain and your mind has got to process what that actually means. It's not easy with this. This is one of the most kind of tricky subjects in Buddhism to get a concept of, to get an idea of what we're talking about. It feels like you have no idea what I'm saying because I'm just throwing all these words out and you haven't associated a concept with the words yet. So, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Do you mind me asking just where everybody is or from? Is that okay to say? So
yeah, go ahead, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, should we stop recording? Would that be okay?
Well, do you want to do this at the end then? Let me just do some prayers and dedication
Yeah.
to finish
Yeah.
with. Then we can share the information. Because you're right, that's probably too much for putting on YouTube, wherever we're going to put this. Okay, so well, just close your eyes for a minute and just take a few deep breaths in and out through the nose to kind of just clear the mind of any confusion or any anxiety and kind of tightness, because this topic can often bring up tight minds because it's difficult. So because we motivated at the beginning this positive motivation of bodhicitta, so we've created quite stunning levels of positive karma since we first started about an hour and 15 minutes ago. So now what we're doing is this dedication is we're kind of pointing that positive karma for a certain goal that we've created. So the best goal would be to become fully awakened ourselves, to liberate all suffering sentient beings. So just something from the heart that means that to you, and just have a genuine connection with that big mind. You want to become the best version of yourself to help others. Decide that the positive karma you've created is going to be for that. We dedicate this positive karma also so that we can quickly realize all the points of the Lam Rim, from the correct way to rely on a teacher, through the wisdom realizing emptiness, bodhicitta, all the tantra realizations, so that we can become awakened ourselves. And this topic is really important. It's, everything the Buddha taught was to be free of suffering and to realize emptiness. Pabonka Rinpoche, in his book, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, says that even just thinking about emptiness, wisdom realizing emptiness, puts a crack in samsara. We've already started to shake the foundations of our samsaric experience. So that's pretty amazing. It's so rare to find these teachings and to be thinking about them. So I really feel strongly positive and rejoice in that. And we dedicate for the long life of and healthy lives of our teachers, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Tsong Khapa, these beings who have realized emptiness and are showing us by their example. Okay, then we'll stop there. So I'm just going to stop the recording now and then we can share information if we need to. Thank you.